Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are really struggling with drawing shadows, and even after watching dozens of how to shade your drawing videos, and if you really want to learn a simple pen and ink method of where shading and shadows go that you can really begin using immediately, then you gotta watch this video so that every time you whip out your pen and you get to the point in your ink drawings or even your digital drawings where you gotta start actually adding in shading, you're going to know exactly where to start adding those first hatch marks. So give this video a few minutes of your time and I promise you're not going to regret it. Alright, so get out your favorite sketchbook that you forgot all about in the back of your shelf, whip it out, open it up, get out your pen, and let's start learning about shadows. Alright, so the number one principle that you need to understand is that light and shadow describe form. Okay, so you might be thinking, what the heck does that even mean? Well, let me explain. If I draw this shape, then it's nothing but a shape. But once I add a light source, that light will instantaneously begin wrapping around the shape to begin describing its form. Think of shapes like two-dimensional little kids, and think of form as its super jacked, stronger older brother. As soon as a light source is added, any hidden form will immediately appear. And this is why when us artists, we do hours of charcoal figure drawings, we use figure references with very good lighting that creates gorgeous form shadows and gorgeous cast shadows. It defines the form of the human body and you get these gorgeous drawings. Okay, so now that you understand that very important principle, let's get into the 6 types of form shadows and how to draw cast shadows with organic shapes and forms. We talked about the light sources in the last video, but something just as important that I need to uh, go into a little bit more detail on is going to be the types of shadows. And that's going to be everything that makes this go from a simple shape to a form. Right? So we know that light describes form, right? Is we're going to do just your basic side light, right? The side light. And you start off with 6 different types of shadows. The first one is going to be the highlight. I know it's not a shadow, but I like to include it in this whole area. So if the side light is pointing this way to this pointless cone, then you're gonna have literally a 50-50 separation between dark and light. So this area is going to be your highlighted zone, specifically whatever is exactly in the pathway of light. And so what I always like to do is I start with the core shadow. So once we have the highlight addressed, the second thing that you want to look at is your midtones, right? So these are your midtones, A and B. I always call them A and B. So even though, I have them numbered this way, you really want to, in my opinion, start with that divider. That's the core shadow. And the core shadow is going to be your third, which I really, really like and I think helps set the tone for everything, right? For simplicity's sake, we're going to start with looking at it 1 through 6, but I am going to begin shadowing with the core shadow. And the reason why I do that, and you'll see why, is when we start adding those midtones A and B, A is like your all-purpose midtone, kind of just covers everything, overlap the core shadow as well to make the core shadow really dark. And then your B is going to be just your little speckle hatch marks, just to help that describe that form that's going around, right? You want to help describe that form with these. So now that you have your highlight, which is here, right? Highlight. Then you have your midtones, A and B. You have your core shadow. Now we're going to go to your reflective light shadow. shadow, and that's going to be right here. So again, just very loosely describing form, because again, your hatching is not near as important as placing your hatch marks where they need to be. That's the most important thing, right? So we have your core shadow, midtones, B or A and B, and then we have your reflective light, right? So this is very important because this gives the illusion of building that 3D form with this shape that we have. Then, of course, if the light is going sideways, we just want to go in the direction of the light. Then we're going to go ahead and just loosely, you don't have to do this, but I always do that. We're going to see where that other base circular shape is. And then right at the end, the highest point, you're going to draw a parallel line across. Now, this is a taper, so it tapers up. So you can even taper it a little bit, all right? And just since it's a side light, it's going to go on as long as it can till the light dissipates. Okay, so number 5 is going to be your occlusion shadow. And that's going to be basically the part where the form meets the ground. And it's going to be your darkest value, okay? Then from there, we're going to go ahead and hatch in the cast shadow. Okay, so with a cast shadow, simple lines, you don't need anything crazy. And you'll describe exactly where that cast shadow needs to be, okay? Now, if you look here, you're going to notice something. So the occlusion line or the occlusion shadow is going to be very dark. The cast shadow is very dark as well, but it's not near as dark as this, but it is darker than the reflective light shadow, okay? And the reason why, as I explained before, if this is a plane, right, and you have light coming this way, light is always going to bounce. It's always going to bounce and hit back here. And as a matter of fact, the closer the form is to this plane, the lighter the bounce light is going to be. It's like this basically absorbs all the light, bounce it back. So you'll have a little bit of a darker shadow on top, and it'll be lighter where the bounce light is coming from, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. This is a quick review of the types of shadows, and now let's go on to how does light cast shadows onto other forms, right? And then after that, we'll go into organic forms, okay? All right, so in order to get you a really good understanding, let's actually go here. Let's do a simple cylinder. And let's say that's on some kind of like a, just maybe a runway or a plane or something. And then you have a wall. So this is a plane with a 90-degree angle, and that's a wall going straight up. Okay, so we're going to do again a side light. And we know we start with the core shadow, even though it's number 3, for simplicity's sakes. And that divides the light from the shadow, where the dark areas come, okay? So we're going to draw this really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and do the midtones, your A's, and then your midtone B's, and then we're going to go ahead and do the reflective light. And as we learned just right now, there's a little bit of a bounce that comes back, so there's more bounce from here because it's closer, but there will also be bounce light this way, and there'll be bounce light this way, okay? So we're going to do this a little bit darker and keep this a little bit lighter, okay? We're going to do our occlusion shadow. And then in order to make this really easy, we're not going to do any pinpoint lighting, so it's not going to be like this. We're just going to go the direction of the light. Okay, we're going to keep everything parallel. Okay, so everything's going to be parallel. Okay, so in order for the form to give the accurate cast shadow, we're going to do exactly what I did here. And we're going to draw that little base. Again, you don't have to do it, but just kind of eyeball it. It's going to be about right here. And then we're going to draw a parallel line. Right, to the wall. Now, because this is a 90-degree wall, you are going to now draw 90 degrees up. So you're going to take into consideration this circle, right? Draw a parallel line there, and that's going to be your top. And you're going to meet it 90 degrees here, okay? So now we have the exact silhouette or outline of where your form is going to be, okay? So this is where we now do the cast shadow. In order to know how all these organic forms and shapes cast shadows on each other, you have to learn these basic things, these basic principles, okay? So if we go ahead and do another example, you have this basic principle that shadow follows the form, right? You need light and shadow to describe form, right? This was quote unquote a form, and this is a form. See the description? Now you can know that this is slanted at about 45 degrees, and this is about 90 degrees, right? 45 degrees, excuse me, 45 degrees. So let's take this, what we know here, and now let's go into how these shadows are going to be drawn onto more organic forms. I'll explain that next. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a different view, right? So let's have the light source, grab a little bit darker pen so you can see better. So let's have the light source 3/4 rear, okay? Let's switch it up a little bit. We have our cylinder, which can represent basically anything. 3/4 rear means you have a quarter shadow, or sorry, a quarter in light and 3/4 in shadow, okay? So basically you're going to start with your core shadow. You're going to have your midtones, A and B, and they're going to have your reflective light shadows, okay? Now, let's say you have something like a plane. I had this question asked. It was a comment, and they asked, "What do you do? How do you draw squares? Like, how do you draw the cube with shadow?" Well, when the light's coming at an angle to it, you would think that this part would be the darkest, but in fact, your darkest is going to be the plane that's more perpendicular, or I think the word's adjacent to the light. So if the light's coming here, this side is going to be your darkest. On top of that, whatever hard form, whatever hard edge rather that you have is going to be the absolute darkest. So this is going to be very, very dark, okay? So we're going to go ahead and darken this. Okay? And this side is actually going to be lighter than this side. Why? Because reflective light, there's bounce light coming through, right? It's coming through and it's bouncing right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this some bounce light. Here, you're going to have, because it's a plane, you're going to have slight variations of lighting, which are going to look like stimples or whatever. That's your shadow. Slightly. It's not a lot, but it's slightly, okay? All right, so this is how these two are going to look independent of each other. So once you add an object in front, this object is going to cast a shadow. How does that shadow look? Okay, let's see. If we take this direction and we stick with this direction, we know, you remember you draw the little base right here and you stick with this directionality, we know that it's going to hit, right? I would go a step further and I would just barely show the dimensionality, the form of this cube-like structure, okay? So we know that the other side, the base is going to be here. So this form is going to basically come right here, okay? Come right here. Now, because we're working in basic perspective, you want to draw a line straight up from the base of where this shadow is being cast, okay? So that's going to go straight up, okay? You're going to do the same thing here. This is going to come right here. It's going to come straight up right there. So we have here and here. Now we're going to follow the direction. All right. So this is going to be the cast shadow that goes on top of this form. We add our occlusion shadow, right? This is the absolute darkest. Okay. And we have our cast shadow before it hits the form, which is the cube. And then we have the shadow after it hits the form on the cube. All right. So let's just say this was a little bit higher up, then you would extend this way. So this line would come here, from there, and it would actually run the entire way if this was a taller form, okay? You'd still have the occlusion shadow, right? Follow the form. So the occlusion shadow is going to come here, right? Again, it doesn't matter. Your hatch lines don't matter. Plus, I'm being very quick with what I'm doing so that you guys can get the point. Form is still coming this way, right? So you're going to have a little bit of form there, a little bit of form there, a little bit of form there. Now, this you can estimate, you can get very particular how long you want it. If it's like a straight, really low light, this is going to go very, very long. If it's a little bit higher up, it's going to be shorter. For the sake of this example, we're going to go semi-long, okay? Because it is a kind of a low light, okay? And you're just going to draw this out. Then you're going to draw this one out as well. You're going to keep the form, keep the angles the same. Keep the angles the same. Okay? And then you would just shade all that in. And of course, you can shade it. You can do whatever you want, however you want to do it, whatever style. If this is grass, then you would use, lots of thick, dark lines like grass. And as it gets farther out, you would have little textures. But whatever you want to use, just remember, it doesn't matter the exact hatching marks. What matters is that you're putting them in the right spot, okay? So that's how form is going to overlap on something like this. Okay, so now let's make this into a real scenario with organic forms. Okay, I'm going to do two types. All right, so let's say you have something like a really cool palm tree, right? It's these those basic examples that become the element that you're going to end up falling back on when you're doing your shapes or your examples. And let's say there's like a log or something. Now we're going to do instead of this, we're going to do a cylinder. So let's say it's some kind of like a log or something like that, right? Got your little tree there. Okay. All right, so we have a log next to it. And you have something very simple, right? You got a side light. And so using these principles, you're going to start with your cast shadow. So let me get a different pen. So we're going to have cast shadow is going to start way at the top. It's going to be very thick, meaty, beautiful marks, right? Yeah, right. These are very very ugly, but they do what they need to do. They describe form, right? So we have those. And then we even have them, let's see, up here, right? We're going to do the same thing here. When you have a log, I'll show you exactly how this log is supposed to be. Because it's at an angle, if you were to have a log like this, then if it's side light, then you're going to cut that straight down the middle. Because this is curved, because this is angled, okay, you are now changing the trajectory. It's not 50-50 side light. Okay, so we have this here. If you were to go like this and make a straight line, and then perpendicular line that way, this would technically be your new side light, right? If your head was here and you were looking that way, okay? So since we were not there, we're here, and this is angled because our head is looking that way. This is a side light, which gives it almost a 3/4. So now this is basically 3/4. We're looking at, this is side light. This is 3/4 front. The other video I have explains the lighting. Knowing those lightings, right? The front light, which is basically you looking that way. Then you have 3/4 front, which is you looking at 3/4 this way or this way. Then you have your side light, which is either straight left or straight right. Then of course you have your rear 3/4 light source, and then you have your rear light. It's called pure rear light. Looks like this, right? Rear light. So that's how turning these objects, right? You have one here. Instead of the objects being like this, they're turned different angles. You can get different light sources for each one. And knowing those objects in different perspective is going to help so much, okay? So because it's 3/4 rear, because this is now a 3/4 front light. So because this is 3/4 front light, that means 3/4 is going to be in light and 1/4 is going to be in shadow, okay? So that's what we're going to do here. Okay, so let's do, and the reason why you want to understand where this is so you can put your core shadow, which is the most important, in my opinion, for knowing where to start. That's your start, okay? So let's do 3/4 of this is going to be in light now. All right, now let's do our midtones, or our midtones, right? then we're going to do our midtones here. Ken, if this is helping, please let me know if this is helping. If this is boring everybody, please let me know it's boring everybody, okay? So then we're going to do our reflective light. Still shadow, but it's not as bright, or it's not as dark rather. And it comes back here to give you some lighted form. Okay? Okay. So now that we got that done, we're going to do the shadow. So this is very important. Some people get kind of tripped up on this part, but again, the light source, we're going to do a far off light source, not a local light that has perspective, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go and imagine the base where it'd be about right here, and then we're going to go parallel to this light source. Okay, and we know that's where it's going to be. We can continue on. And again, this is where this is going to take care of this form. Got our occlusion shadow. And then let's get in the cast shadows, okay? Okay, so when your cast shadow goes over form like this, do not make the mistake of this. Don't start here and go over. That's no. Because remember, it would look like this if you had a form like that, okay? But remember, this is a complete cylinder. So what you want to do instead is you're actually going to start here, and then you're going to wrap it around, okay? You're going to start here, wrap it around. Why? Well, because we're building form. There's a form. There's a circular form, okay? So hopefully this is helping everybody. Okay, so this, I should probably do this too because why not, right? So this is very important to get that shadow. Now, of course, we also have this log. We need to take into consideration, what does this look like? Since the log is really short, we can actually extend that out maybe just about right here, not too far, okay? And again, it depends. You can have the sun here. It could be like 10 o'clock. It could be here. It can be 1 o'clock. Usually the lower the sun or the light source, the longer the shadow. So, but for the sake of the example, let's just go to about right here, okay? The inclusion shadow, which is this part right here, is going to be, it's going to start right where the cylinder, the widest point hits the ground, and it's going to come out. Okay, so give you an example. Just like that, okay? And then from there, we're going to just follow. Try to follow, where would it be? Follow the form and the same angle, right? And then guess what? You have your cast shadow, all right? And that's what it looks like when you have form next to another form and the light is casting a shadow, okay? One last example, organic shape. And how do you add shadow, right? Okay, and shadows. Okay, so I had a lot of questions about this, and I think this is a very good thing to address. Okay, so let's say let's do a shape like like a weird macaroni or something like that. I don't know, something organic, like something you would see maybe with an arm, a body part that would look like that, right? So you have this shape, and let's do a simple side light for the sake of a quick explanation. So you have side light, which is basically 50-50, right? So right off the bat, you're thinking, well, I think I know what it's going to be like. It's going to be, it's going to be like this, right? Do your core shadow, you do this, and that would be wrong, because you have to break down organic shapes. The number one rule is to break down organic shapes into simple shapes. Now you can use shapes, or you can call them forms, right? Because this is obviously a form. Right now there's no shadows, so technically it's more like a shape. We're going to add form to it with light and shadow, okay? So how do we do this? So let's look at this, and how many forms do you see in here? Right here. So I see this form, which is a cylinder. Actually, I see one form 3 times. So I see the form that is side light, right? It's basically going the same exact direction as the light. So we'll look how that works. I also see this form, and then I see this form. Okay? And I'll show you. So we have this weird looking shape, and I'll probably do okay, so I have this shape, right, or this form, which is a cylinder. Then we have this big old cylinder right here, and then we even have this cylinder. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see that, but these 3 are in this shape. Expand them out, and here they are. Okay, so this one goes here, this one goes here, and this one goes here. Okay, so with these light source of a side light, how do you add form shadows to these shapes, which represent this organic shape? When you understand this in its simplest shapes, it'll help you to then add shadow here. And again, these are guidelines. You can bend them however you want, but understanding these basic principles is going to help you do things like chest muscles, ab muscles, arms, legs. Make your really cool organic shapes and break them down. Try to really see the shapes that are within them, and then use light and shadow to build the form. You can shade anything. Okay, so let's look at this. What is this cylinder that is basically laying down in the same direction as the light going to look like? Okay, so because this is basically a plane, a flat plane, it's going to be 100% in light. We're going to have a little bit of shadow coming on the top. Actually, we're going to have a lot of shadow coming on the top and the bottom. These are basically going to be like your cast shadows. And then you're going to have the rest of your shadow here. This was basically going to act like your reflective light. As the light comes here, it's going to bounce there, okay? So it's darker here, lighter here, but regardless, this whole side or this whole form is going to be in shadow. Now, when you have this one, which is a little bit easier, so I'm going to go to this one next. This is pretty basic, right? You're going to have 50-50 side light, okay? 50-50 side light. You're going to do your core shadow. You're going to do your mid-tone shadows. And then you're going to do your reflective light. shadows, okay? This, because it's a flat plane, because it's 90 degrees to this light source, this is going to be dark. It's actually going to be the darkest out of all of them, okay? This is going to be what's called the hard edge, so it's going to be even darker right there. All right, so now that we have that, what is this going to look like? What is this turn going to look like? Hint, 3/4 turn. What is it going to look like? The light is, in essence, now in the back. So we have this new light source is going to be 3/4. Okay, this is 3/4. This one acts like a rear. Should go like this actually. That's rear light. This one acts like side light. And this one acts like 3/4 rear. Okay, so if we remember, rear, everything that is facing you is going to be dark, and the silhouette around is the darkest. Side light, half of it is dark, half is light. Rear light, 3/4 rear light, most of it is dark. So you're going to have your core shadow here, your midtones there, and your reflective light here, okay? So that's what it's going to be like. Since this is basically getting some light, you're going to have just a little bit, but it's not even worth putting. Just leave it blank, or leave it lit up for this purpose. So now let's put these back into this organic shape, back into the final shape, okay? And it seems like this is where this cylinder starts to turn, and we're going to get into this 3/4 rear, and then we're going to get into the rear lighting, where the core shadow is right on top, okay? So that's the pattern you make. Now let's add in the midtones. All right. And then let's add in the reflective light. Okay. So when you get into the cast shadow, we have the occlusion, which is going to be the darkest part. Okay. And then we're going to use the direction to follow all the way. Okay, so we're going to imagine this end of the form. Imagine where the bottom of that cylinder edge is, and then we're going to take it all the way to the edge. Now let's look at this form, and let's draw it here. Boom. It's going to fall off this table, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and just add in that cast shadow. Remember, the cast shadow is always darker than any of your form shadows, excluding your main dark shadow, which is your core shadow, okay? And then what I like to do is also like to add just a little bit darker, closer it gets to the form. Okay, so now we've built form and we know how an organic shape moves. So what do? Number one rule, you break your organic shape into simple shapes or forms. Okay, break them into simple shapes or forms. When you do that, you can understand any organic form. All right, hopefully this helps. All right. Wow. If any of you are still watching, thank you. I give you permission to go online and order yourself a set of your favorite pens because you earned it. So Obviously, there's much more to learn about adding shadows and forms, but start with these basic methods and keep learning it to master drawing the 4 basic forms from every direction. Because you're going to begin seeing improvements at an exponential rate because you're learning methods and principles that are really fundamental to drawing everything. And don't worry about your hatch marks, like I said. Just focus on where they go on your form. Thank you all for watching. I post weekly pen and ink drawing videos that are intended to cut out a lot of fluff and clutter so that you can have really good resources to learn from. And I believe we're all created by God for a purpose. And if we are artists, then it's our duty to develop our God-given gifts and talents. So if this sounds like the type of channel you like, consider liking and subscribing so that you can fast track your artistic development. Also, check out any of these videos which are on either side of me. They are packed with years of drawing tips and methods that are guaranteed to help you out. So God bless you, and I'll see you on the next one.